Okay, so thank you very much again for having us, and I completely agree with George. You are doing great work there, and we are very happy to be here. So for me, it's the first time since 6.5 years to be back in Europe. First of all, short note how this presentation is composed. I think we brought a good dose of slides with subtitles. There's no accent, you can read it. And we provide some captions. And while talking about gardens, the intention is to talk about purposeful purposelessness. We start. Anna and I have lived in many different places and have planted a large variety of gardens. To say goodbye to these gardens, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Perfect.
Upon moving was always a very emotional act, as to cultivate a garden means to get involved with the place and to settle down. In our talk about this project, we try to respond to a fundamental question. Why are we, as landscape architects, always so serious? Fallen angels. There seems to be an obsessive desire to rescue a fallen world. For sure, we have to be serious about landscapes and gardens. But does our concern for the world require us to weigh fun and joy? Home, we know, is not just a place where you happen to be born, it's the place where you become yourself. That's a quote from Pico Iyer. On a global level, we have become enthusiastic travelers in an ongoing journey to explore and discover new gardens. On a local level, our journey of discovery begins right from our very own doorstep. 12 years ago, we moved with our 2 young children from Germany to Winnipeg, or, if you prefer, from the north slope of the Alps into the vastness of the Manitoban prairie, or closer to the North Pole. Once I found a note on Dirt. Dirt is a ASLA TM blog which covers the latest news on the built in natural environments and features stories on landscape architecture. Quote, browsing through the latest issue of Azure magazine, one can see socially and conscious design is making its way even into the far reaches of Winnipeg, Canada. We felt honored to see our project covered by the ASLA, but somehow it sounded like they are getting out of their igloos. Oops.
Maybe introduce Winnipeg in a nutshell. It is amazing how, for example, we are able to make our way into the Earth's orbit. A dot of light in the middle of the dark, that's Winnipeg. Wide open skies and fertile soils. The tall grass prairie is converted into farmland. The first settlers were attracted with the promise of golden landscapes. Some of them left the vastness right away because the almost treeless landscape was a frightening prospect. Locus amoenus turned into locus horribilis. Farmers love to drive straight into the horizon. If you want to experience a tall grass prairie, you have to visit a living museum or a restoration project today. Winnipeg is a city with extreme climates. Winter temperatures have been known to plummet to minus 40 degrees in south of Canada and rise to similar values on the plus scale in summer. You have to consider that we live in a city where individuals' calendars are categorized into 9 months of winter and 3 months of bad skating. A city in a Super Bowl, or a city at the bottom of a former lake, Lake Agassiz. Extreme winters, short, humid summers, annual flooding issues, but the reality is very dry. 500 millimeters per year, 30% as snow, challenging for people and plants.
Maybe it's not too cold outside. Josh, that's the image I brought for you. That's Bas. No, that's the event you missed.
Yeah.
So we can walk on water. They don't know now how to turn water into wine, but that's something we work on. So yesterday was great. The first thing we did when we arrived here, we walked the promenade. It was great because Anna's mom is here. It's a great opportunity for us, to walk and talk, to see a project, to take photos. There were so many people on their ways, biking, riding. And I think there was some laughing there. I saw couples on some of these well-placed benches. Then I went down to the riverbed, and I think I carried a lizard. We saw blue herons, and everything happens at the same time. Sometimes I think, I thought something like this can just happen on these, images produced by the young designers, where everything happens simultaneously, but it's there. The only thing I missed, I couldn't find any cherries on the trees. Maybe it's the wrong season. Yes. I guess so. Maybe I have a reason to come back. And I say, if you want to experience this, if you want to get a little bit closer with us to the North Pole, you have to come back as well. You would be very welcome again in Winnipeg to provide a lecture.
Oh, it's cherries.
Pardon?
I will bring cherries.
Okay. Bricolage. Bricolage implies a practice where the protagonists meet everyday needs by using locally available resources. This design philosophy values the worth of the worthless, the aesthetics of the poor, and the invention of humble projects that produce innovative insights, knowledge, and practices.
Each year, Americans spend an average of 3 million hours pushing or riding mowers, most of which pollute at a rate 10 times that of our cars. In fact, if a lawnmower were a car, it would be a Hummer, a resource-intensive, plainly unsustainable luxury item that looks cool but is environmental destructive.
I have to admit that I love to play soccer, but I'm not good when it comes down to spread pesticides, herbicide, water, labor, and cash for our lawn. Henry David Thoreau wrote, quote, "Hope and the future for me are not in lawns." He called his neighbors' front yards a poor apology for a nature and art. I'm inattentive and forgetful when it comes to this special occasion. Mother's Day has arrived. We are visiting relatives in Massachusetts, which is not a place where Mother's Days are forgotten. How can I provide a kind of platform for declarations of love? The solution employs the lawn as its playful medium.
For over a decade, we have been working on planting designs considering to be a friendly assault on the Canadian lawn. All designs follow a particular botanical choreography created to inspire a new ecological aesthetic and to provide habitats for all living things. How much pioneering spirits does this Canadian lawn support? The proposal for a bowl-shaped lawn on the University of Manitoba campus seeks to strike a balance between the everyday and the extraordinary.
Elfencrocus, it's the German name for Crocus thomasianus, and means fairy crocus. These fairies are not native in Manitoba, and we had never met them in this Canadian province before. After an extended adventurous voyage from Europe to New York, they finally got their passports and arrived in Winnipeg, demonstrating that the new arrivals have no invasive intentions, the issuing authorities gave the green light. Setting the stage for around 20,000 flowers, this project formed quite a spectacle in the first spring. The modest endeavor led to an explosion of lilac blue flowers on the lawn and transformed the space into a major focus of attention. Of course, this intervention came with the sincere hope of encouraging emulation on a larger scale and of initiating a metamorphosis of the Canadian lawn. But, as it goes, the fairies did not reappear the next spring, although they were warmly welcomed by people and bumblebees.
The reasons for this are somewhat speculative. Maybe they didn't agree with the lawn care, or they have never experienced snow in May. But we are continually asked, how are the fairies doing? This is perhaps the greatest degree of success. The fairies are still alive in people's mind.
But if you're a landscape architect, as you might know, it does not take long till people ask, can you do my backyard? As a new immigrant, we hesitated in the first years because we didn't feel prepared to cultivate backyards in a prairie climate. Rather than being disappointed about this cliché expectation, we have gotten accustomed to grasp the opportunity with both hands and to respond with, yes, we can. We try to use these backyards as hatcheries for ideas, allowing us to explore the border zone between theoretical and applied thinking in the scale 1-to-1. Right from the beginning, our pact with the new friends or our clients is based on the importance of an experimental design approach that includes the risk to fail. Processes of aging and decay, speculative projections, uncertainties, and the deliberate integration of the uncontrolled therefore play crucial roles.
The young family has just moved into their new house. It was already spring, almost too late to start a garden project. And then the new house devoured most of the budget. One possible solution, instant garden. This was the start for Rooted in Clay. Sandbagging is part of people's common memory in Winnipeg. In many years, walls of white sandbags are all over the place during snowmelt. Sandbags can be reused if they are not contaminated. The body of this garden is composed of white sandbags and eatable greenery. Sandbags with greenery had pockets with humus and manure to ensure that the plants felt comfortable in this environment. Pumpkins, zucchini, cucumbers, tomatoes, and nasturtium made daring conquests over the course of the year. A sprinkler provided a cooling experience at times, with the overall effect being a vegetable garden, a giant sandfield, or a private beach, depending on your viewpoint and interests.
The skin fought the wheat back without any chemistry and reduced evaporation. The touchable surface of this garden was calculated like a tender, semi-permeable skin, showing irritations, folds, color, aging, emotions, and sunburns. We knew about the half-life of the material, but we didn't want to operate with creams. At the time, we were already looking forward to a new dance of chlorophyll, kids, and butterflies. Making a garden means nothing more than to start a dialogue with the land and the living beings on it. It involves making the garden speak to tell stories. Are we as humans still seeking paradise? Are we as landscape architects capable of supporting this search? Regardless, the innocent garden remains a powerful, timeless medium to promote a socially, ethically, and ecologically responsible culture in environmental design practice.
Gardens are ubiquitous phenomena on architectural concepts of human trying to coexist with nature. They offer Homo sapiens the opportunity to creatively adapt themselves to new worlds, led by the deeply hope to maintain values of culture, feed everyday's needs, and to create a place called home. Rooted in Clay is a central experiment that demonstrates how something small, the garden and its gardener, find sanctuary with something big, the landscape. This garden is situated in an access-only street in a residential area in Winnipeg. Sealed driveways and manicured lawns are the typical welcome. The side of the home facing away from the street enjoy beautiful views and the scenery landscape of the Red River. We planted a forest of fruits. Seasonal changing levels, annual floods, ongoing erosion, and high concentrations of red sediment, the Red River in Winnipeg is highly dynamic urban water body. How do we deal with this energy on a beautiful situated river lot? Our design for the garden is a sensitive response to this topological context. Salvaged wooden beams and granite boulders are objets trouvés and serve as tables and benches for a driveway dining room. Not a single nail or screw was used in this project. Only gravity joins beams and boulders, roots and clay.
We have been persistently working on this garden for almost 7 years. Together with the family and our children, we discussed, designed, built, planted, pruned, watered, transplanted, seeded and harvested. The garden gave us the time to socialize, to get to know each other and to grow close. The controlled reuse, upgrading and transformation of materials into a new context was the key to this poetic design statement. To cultivate a garden also means to become profoundly immersed in a landscape and to ensure that the utilization of existing resources does not damage the environment, thus contributing to a sustainable life.
These ornamental onions nosing their way through the tail ends of the grass. The apple blossom has already passed.
The entire garden is a space in gentle motion. Roots, grasses, trees, water, wind, light, views, gaps, shadows, and architecture all resound into an eventful whole. This planting design is another attempt to attack the Canadian lawn. It bypasses the city bylaw that insists on a maximum height of 6 inches for grass. With the monoculture of trimmed lawns cultivated on neighboring properties, the community bylaw inspectors are perplexed by this atypical garden. The grass cannot be decreed as an eclectic lawn. No rule is broken, no ticket issued.
You don't like colors? We have to meet. We use solvent-free paint to drop bright and luminous dashes of color into our climate of short summers and long winters.
The human desire for protection and discretion materializes in this garden. It is a social place intended to care for the most precious things: plants, people, fauna, ideas, and the soil in which all of them take root. The garden invites you to linger, sit, play, look, listen, think, eat, drink, and chat away to your heart's content. We see a lot of wildlife in this garden during summertime. We know that animals have developed infrastructures and techniques in order to survive in this extreme prairie climate, and we can support them through planting and design. Pukak is an Inuit word for the lower layer of ice crystals and open space that forms at the base of the snowpack. This creates a perfect refuge for small mammals and insects. Where there's little vegetation, such as on a lawn or frozen river, no pukak layer forms.
80% of the plant's biomass is invisible to the human eye. The roots of the grasses dig deep into the Red River clay. Our forest of roots protects this property from erosion and provides habitat for all living things. Chatting with the owner over the summer, they told us how they linger in their garden, how they cultivate the plants, how they drift through the space, looking at the flowers and leaves and constantly come across something delightful new. The garden coaxes them to shift down a gear. They discover an undetected passion to grow their own herbs, but also the experience that a garden requires care, patience, and time.
We are teachers and we believe that a good school needs more than labs, computers, books, and classrooms. Plato founded an academy in an olive grove outside of the gates of Athens. Here, he and his students enjoyed teaching, learning, and wandering at leisure in the cool shade of trees. The subjects taught were philosophy and science, and the students called themselves academics. How can we cultivate our learning landscapes in our frozen prairie, on our frozen prairie island in Winnipeg? The snow was important for us for this project and permission from admin on campus, not the money. Without this stuff for free, we wouldn't have been able to operate this academy. Some angels were involved. Our building material was the snow that the prairie winter produced throughout that year. In a larger context, our work on this project involved developing a flair for snow and a better understanding of local conditions, risks, and opportunities. We learned and experienced how humans developed infrastructure and techniques to keep life going in this region of extreme climate. At the point when the concrete materials were assembled and erected, the space we have been looking for became part of the real world. It was under control, but not everything was really predictable. We love to integrate the unexpected, finding beauty in spontaneity and imperfection.
The amalgamation of teaching, research, and design is for us the perfect model to take risks and develop unconventional solutions while learning to follow, but also to expand the rules. Let's be realistic, let's try the impossible. Many awarded projects meet this demand for the first classy shot based on rubber surfaces, decorative equipment, and flashy light effects. But what at first glance seems entertaining often has a short expiration date. Instead of developing a distinctive patina, many classy projects start to rot after completion. When people ask us what we think about a certain new project, we answer with the following recommendation. Close your eyes and imagine this place in 10, 20, or even 100 years, and you will know. Our designs do not aim to make a spectacle of themselves or celebrate the client's prestige, but simply strive to give the everyday space its own energy by injecting a sensual feel. None of the humble projects will rescue the world.
I found a nice sentence or thought in an essay written by Joanna Gibbons, one of our colleagues in England. She mentioned, more than a century ago, Alfred Wegener proposed one of the most far-reaching geological theories called continental drifts. The lateral drift of ocean-separated continents leads to the wonderful notion of wandering continents. We have to cultivate our garden with care and respect because we just have this one. So Anna and I, we were very touched by Michael Koch's words. He's an architect from Brandon in Manitoba, when he wrote something about our place here. Perhaps having listened to McHarg, two designers found the courage to ask some leftover lumber a bit of long grass, a few stones, and a muddy riverbank, what they would like to be, how they might become rooted in clay. Thank you.